After spending my whole life by my husband's side, I've been reborn back to my college days. I ran excitedly to find my husband and saw him standing outside the dorm building, confessing his feelings to the class beauty. Missing out on you would be the biggest regret of my life. Gu Qiao. You've been standing in front of the mirror for at least half an hour. What are you doing? Of course it's to admire my beauty. I gazed admiringly at the slender, graceful girl in the mirror with her tiny waist, long legs, fair skin, and not a single wrinkle on her face. Is this what I looked like when I was 18? It's so great to be young. Stop getting all full of yourself. It's really lively downstairs. Jiangchen is waiting at the door with a bouquet of flowers, and I wonder who he's going to confess his feelings to. My roommate Dana walked in holding a cup of milk tea and excitedly shared some gossip with me. Jiangchen. It suddenly hit me I'd been so caught up in admiring my own young, beautiful body that I'd completely forgotten about my husband. I threw on a jacket and jogged down to the dorm building. Jiangchen must have been reborn with me. His body has gotten younger, and his mindset has followed sway that even thought to send me flowers. The last time he gave me flowers was, I think, the year I gave birth to Xiao Bao, the only time in my life he ever gave me flowers. He said it was to thank me for carrying on the Jiang family line. Thinking of Xiao Bao, I ran my hand over my flat stomach. Wow, I even have a six-pack. Xiao Bao. Just let mom have a few more happy years. I want to enjoy my youth a little longer before I have you. Jiang Chen and I were a couple in college, and we went all the way from university to the altar. We've argued, broken up, and had our share of drama. I've been poor, I've worked hard, I've been rich, and I've gone bankrupt. When times were at their toughest, the two of them lived in a basement, surviving on plain steamed buns and boiled water for every meal. Only when they were absolutely starving would they treat themselves to a packet of pickled mustard greens. When we had money, we bought a villa, and Jiangchen even bought a house for each of his parents and siblings. We supported each other through thick and thin, and walked hand in hand through life together. In our previous lives, we were so busy starting businesses and making money that, before we knew it, we had reached old age only to realize that we had been so focused on work that we hadn't truly lived our lives or taken the time to explore the world. If we could do it all over again, we'd definitely travel more and do all the things we've always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for. Jiangchen stood at the dormitory door holding a bouquet of flowers. Perhaps because he was nervous, he had his hand on his pants, his middle finger constantly picking at the seam. I chuckled. The year we graduated, the two of us went into business together and started an e-commerce company. Jiangchen is introverted and quiet. He isn't very good at socializing and suffers from a bit of social anxiety. For the sake of his work, he tried hard to learn how to make polite small talk with people, and that's when he developed this habit. Great. Jiangchen really did reincarnate with me. Gu Qiao. What are you looking at? My roommate and best friend, Zhou Xiaoxi, nudged my arm and looked out the front door with curiosity. Just then, Jiangchen turned his head. Sunlight bathed his young, handsome face, and his eyes sparkled with flecks of gold. When he saw me, he gave a shy little smile, revealing two dimples. 18-year-old Jiangchen will always make my heart flutter. Jiangchen walked toward me holding a bouquet of flowers. Just like in a past life, his every step, my entire lifetime. I took a deep breath and spread my arms wide, ready to embrace my happiness once again. Zhou Xiaoxi, I've liked you for a long time. Missing out on you would be the biggest regret of my life. Will you give me a chance to be your girlfriend? Zhou Xiaoxi was clearly a little flustered. She glanced around, her face flushed, as a crowd of classmates nearby began to cheer her on. Say yes. Say yes. Say yes. I pulled my hand back in confusion, only to realize that Jiangchen was staring intently at Zhou Xiaoxi. His gaze was direct and intense, though the world around him was bustling with activity. His eyes were fixed solely on Zhou Xiaoxi. I stood next to Zhou Xiaoxi, looking like a white backdrop. Jiangchen didn't even glance at me out of the corner of his eye. So, has Jiangchen, the man I've been married to my whole life, actually always been in love with Zhou Xiaoxi? I staggered back 2 steps as memories from my past life flooded my mind. It was drizzling that day, and I hurried out to pick up a package. Zhou Xiaoxi said she'd left my umbrella at the library, so she insisted on giving me her coat and hat to wear. She said this jacket is waterproof. If you get wet in cold weather, you'll catch a cold. I rushed out wearing her clothes, but as soon as I stepped out of the dorm, I bumped into Jiangchen. He lowered his head and grabbed my arm. I like you. Will you be my girlfriend? I've had a crush on Jiangchen for a long time. I fell for him right at the start of the school year. The boy I'd had a crush on for a long time confessed his feelings to me in the rain. And that's when I fell in love with rainy days. No wonder Jiangchen rarely texts me or asks me out since we've been together. I thought he was a reserved person who didn't like things that were too sappy. Most of all, I was completely blown away by this stroke of luck. I threw myself headlong into this relationship, blinded by my intense love. How funny, I guess Jiangchen must have mistaken me for Zhou Xiaoxi back then. So the first thing he did after being reborn was to start over with Zhou Xiaoxi. A lifetime together is no match for that eternal first love in one's heart. I took a step back. Then another. Jiangchen waited anxiously for Zhou Xiaoxi's response. He was so excited that beads of sweat had formed on his forehead. A drop trickled down his eyebrow and into his eye, but he kept his eyes wide open, afraid that if he blinked, he would miss her reply. My heart felt as heavy as a lead weight, as if I'd swallowed a mouthful of ice on the coldest day of winter. How unusual, even when we went to meet our most important client together in our last life. Jiangchen wasn't nearly this nervous when I was giving birth. His parents insisted that I have a natural birth, saying that a section wasn't good for the baby. But Xiao Bao was absorbing nutrients very well at the time, and the doctor estimated he weighed over 7 kg. Since the baby is so big, the doctor recommended a section. I lay in bed, pale as a sheet, holding Jiangchen's hand, and asked him if he was nervous now that I was about to give birth. Jiangchen simply said indifferently, "Modern medicine is very advanced. Don't worry about it." With that, he sat down to play video games. I was really angry at the time. But when I came out of the operating room after giving birth, he brought me a bouquet of flowers. That's just how Jiangchen will slap you one moment and then give you a sweet treat the next. He wasn't nervous about having a baby, meeting clients, his son taking the college entrance exam, or his son getting married. But why was he, a man who had lived 2 lifetimes, so nervous about confessing his feelings this time? I looked intently at Jiangchen, the man I've loved my whole life. His face overlapped with the image I had kept in my memory, shattering the beautiful dream I had cherished my whole life. Together, together, together. The world around me was noisy and chaotic. The sounds came and went, and the figures before my eyes blurred into one another. I pinched the palm of my hand. I think I might be getting heat stroke. I'll think it over. Faced with the crowd's jeering and stares, Zhou Xiaoxi felt a little flustered. She glanced around at the crowd and finally cast a pleading look my way. At that moment, Jiangchen finally noticed me. He strode toward me, holding the flowers, and then gripped my arm tightly. "Gu Qiao, great to see you here too. You're closest to Zhou Xiaoxi, you'd better go talk some sense into her. I've really liked her for many years. I promise I'll treat Zhou Xiaoxi really, really well from now on. Please, help me." The vibrant evening sky bathed Jiangchen in a soft golden glow. As I looked at his silhouette, half lit and half shadowed against the light, my memories were transported back to the year we started our business. By the time we finished up at the office, it was already past midnight, and the buses and subways had stopped running. Of course, I couldn't bring myself to take a taxi. My place is quite far from the office, and the fare would be over 30 yuan, enough to cover a day's living expenses for 2 people. It was so cold on the winter streets that my toes were numb. But as I walked down the road with Jiangchen, breathing out puffs of warm air, I couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. Life may be hard and full of hardships, but I am not walking this path alone. With a loved one by my side, the future looks bright and promising. Jiangchen, in a rare show of initiative, took my hand. He thanked me for being willing to endure hardships with him, and said he would definitely give me a better life in the future. He said he loved me, That scammer. Scammer. This is between the two of us. Why are you giving Gu Qiao a hard time? A crisp voice rang out. Zhou Xiaoxi stepped forward, linked her arm through mine, and gave Jiang Chen a demure nod. I need to think it over. You should go home for now. Come on, Gu Qiao. Let's go get something to eat. With that, Zhou Xiaoxi took my hand and led me away, leaving behind a dazed Jiang Chen. Come back to life. Zhou Xiaoxi waved her hand in front of my face. Your noodles will get soggy if you don't eat them soon. You look so preoccupied. What's wrong? I bit down on my chopsticks. My heart filled with mixed emotions. You don't accept Jiang Chen? After asking the questions so carefully, I felt rather ridiculous. Now that we've been reborn into our college days, both Jiang Chen and I are free. Legally speaking, he doesn't owe me anything. And those promises are a thing of the past. As things stand, we are neither husband and wife nor a couple, and he certainly has the right to seek happiness elsewhere. Hey, if I have to agree to everything he says, what kind of person does that make me? With men, the harder they are to get, the more they'll cherish you. Let's give him a couple of days to cool off and see how he behaves. Zhou Xiaoxi said nonchalantly that she had plenty of guys chasing after her. Although Jiang Chen was good-looking, he wasn't exactly a heartthrob. I took a sip of the noodle soup, trying hard to suppress the pang of sadness in my heart, and couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy toward Zhou Xiaoxi. Zhou Xiaoxi comes from a well-off family. Her father runs a company and her mother is a civil servant. Unlike me and Jiang Chen, who are from the countryside, Zhou Xiaoxi possesses the self-assurance and pride typical of city kids. The things I long for but can never have are, to others, nothing more than commonplace. Jiang Chen wasn't discouraged by Zhou Xiaoxi's rejection. After all, having been given a second chance at life, his mental fortitude had grown considerably. He started showing up outside our dorm every day, eagerly bringing Zhou Xiaoxi all sorts of things: flowers, bubble tea, snacks, and fried chicken. Since we were all eating his food, we couldn't help but tease Zhou Xiaoxi. In just a few short days, my emotions shifted from initial sadness and grief to anger and resentment. But I quickly regained my composure. Jiang Chen hadn't even considered that I, too, had been reborn. He looked at me as if I were a stranger. In fact, for fear of causing Zhou Xiaoxi to misunderstand, he even went so far as to block me. After 60 years of relying on each other, if there's no romance, is there really no family bond either? Only then did I realize just how terribly wrong I'd been. I'd loved Jiang Chen my whole life, while well, he'd probably just put up with me my whole life. They got together when they were young because of a misunderstanding, and he was too shy to bring up breaking up. I ended up helping him so much that I even paid for my own wedding dowry out of my own pocket. He felt guilty and couldn't bring himself to speak to me. This long life has been a beautiful fairy tale for Jiang Chen. However, it was a suffocating prison. He doesn't love me, yet he can't live without me. Now that he's finally managed to get out of that cage, why on earth would he want anything to do with me again? Xiao Shi. Are you really not going to accept Jiang Chen? Dana was munching on the braised chicken feet Jiang Chen had bought, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Zhou Xiaoxi was applying a face mask and didn't dare speak loudly. Her voice sounded as if it were being squeezed out of her throat. That's nothing. The Red Army had to march 25th. 000 Li on the long march off course. A man has to be put to the test. I was engrossed in reading when a question suddenly occurred to me. Where did Jiang Chen get the money to buy all these things? Damn. It suddenly occurred to me that our class has one spot for a large scholarship every year, and the recipient receives 10,000 yuan annually. In fact, I gave that spot to Jiang Chen. As fellow rural students from poor families, my grades have always been better than Jiang Chen's. And my family's circumstances were even worse than his. The counselor also told me directly that I was actually the best fit for this position. But then I thought of Jiang Chen's pair of jeans, worn so thin they were practically white, and realized that I had given him the spot after all. Choosing instead to work part-time to earn my living expenses. Right now, I just want to slap myself hard across the face. My scholarship just came in. Docent Jiangchen have plenty of money. He spent all that money trying to win Zhou Xiaoxi over. With that thought, I stood up angrily and snatched the box of chicken feet from Dana's hands. I want some too. Dana was taken aback. What's the matter? Are you starving? Eat, 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 it's all yours. Oh, by the way, Gu Qiao, did you know the school just announced a new Alumni Association scholarship? I was munching on a chicken wing when I suddenly slapped my thigh. How could I have forgotten about that? Our department has a senior alumnus named Pei Ning who graduated 2 years ago. He has successfully launched a startup and, from what I've heard, has raised several hundred million yuan in funding alone. He just happened to be collaborating with our school on a research project. And on a whim, he said he would select 2 students from our department to sponsor. One of the 2 spots went to the class next door, and the other went to Jiangchen. Of course, I was the one who gave it to him. Unlike scholarships offered by the school, the scholarship provided by Pei Ning covered all tuition and living expenses for the 4 years of college. And this money later became the seed capital for Jiangchen's startup after he graduated. I spat out the chicken wing I had in my mouth and rushed headlong toward the counselor's office. In my past life, I voluntarily told my advisor that I was withdrawing from the campaign. But this time around, I absolutely cannot let this opportunity slip away. I ran all the way to the counselor's office and was leaning against the door, gasping for breath. A tall, straight figure stood in the office, silhouetted against the light. It was hard to make out, but the voice was a familiar, cool tone. Teacher, Gu Qiao has already given up this spot, so please give it to me. Wait, I gasped, my gaze sharp enough to cut through Jiangchen. Wait a minute. Teacher, I still want to try for this spot. The counselor's eyes lit up when she saw me. Oh, Gu Qiao, you've finally come to your senses. That's the right attitude. Working every day really gets in the way of your studies. With your natural talent, you should be focusing more on your academics. Jiangchen looked at me in disbelief. Clearly, my behavior was a bit beyond his comprehension. Gu Qiao, haven't you always turned down scholarships? Seeing Jiangchen right in front of me, my heart gave an involuntary jolt. Gu Qiao, I really need this money. Could you let me have this opportunity? Jiangchen lowered her head and gazed intently at me, her beautiful eyes cast downward, her expression tinged with a hint of pleading. I can't stand Jiangchen when he's like this. In the past, whenever he gave me that look, I would have done anything, even plucked the moon from the sky just to make him happy. Gu Qiao, will you help me? Please. That phrase sounds so familiar. He said it many times throughout our long yet fleeting lives. Gu Qiao. My brother's all grown up and ready to get married. As his sister-in-law, you can't bear to see him stay single his whole life. Can you? Gu Qiao. My sister is getting married. Her fiancé isn't well off, so I'm buying her an apartment so she can hold her own in her in-laws' home. Gu Qiao. My parents are getting older, and I want them to move in with us so we can take better care of them. Amid the constant cries of Gu Qiao, you're the best, I kept giving in and compromising. Which is why I ended up being the one in the Gu family with the poorest health. Because I worked so hard and pushed myself so hard, I ended up with a stomach condition, a herniated lumbar disc, cervical spondylosis, and frozen shoulder. Jiangchen. You can't say that. Gu Qiao has given up his scholarship spot for you these past 2 years. Her grades and overall GPA are significantly higher than yours. Her family isn't well off. Her parents didn't want her to go to school and just wanted her to get married. Gu Qiao has been covering her tuition and living expenses every year by working part-time jobs. As classmates, we can't just think of ourselves. In every respect, Gu Qiao is a better candidate for this scholarship than you are. The counselor shot me a disappointed glare, trying to silence me with a stern look. In my previous life, my wedding to Jiangchen was held in their rural hometown. My advisor took a day-long train ride just to come and give me a large red envelope. On our wedding day, she held my hand, her eyes red-rimmed. Gu Qiao, you have to learn to love yourself. It wasn't until this very moment that I finally understood the meaning of that saying. In my past life, Jiangchen was the brightest light in my dark world, my salvation and my hope. And in this life, I want to be my own light. As we left the office, each lost in our own thoughts, Jiangchen glanced at me again and again. He frowned and studied me closely, his gaze somewhat probing. It seemed very rude. I couldn't take it anymore and turned around. What are you looking at? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Jiangchen asked tentatively. I find it a bit funny. Since you're so dismissive of your past life and have decided to start over, I certainly can't keep giving in to you and helping you with everything anymore. Because I'm poor. Jiangchen blinked, looking a little bewildered. I never complained to him about my struggles. No matter what happens, I always smile and say I'm fine and doing great. Clearly, my behavior is completely different from what it was before my rebirth. Xiao Bao, you're here. Where's Xiao Bao? I looked around and met Jiangchen's gaze just as I'd expected. Gu Qiao, you've been reborn too. I neither denied nor admitted it. I gave Jiangchen a long, hard look, then strode off. Hey, wait, Gu Qiao, why are you getting so upset? In that case, let's just come out and say it. My attitude infuriated Jiangchen. After all, I had doted on him his whole life. And there had been very few times when I had been so cold toward him. Jiangchen and I were sitting on a bench by the school lake. The sunlight shone on the water's surface, as if a layer of fine gold leaf had been sprinkled over it. The scenery was beautiful. But I wasn't in the mood to enjoy it, because Jiangchen said that the happiness I had in my past life was something I had stolen in the first place. I've put up with you my whole life and paid for my own mistakes. What's wrong with pursuing the person I love in this life? Jiangchen was clearly a bit worked up. He stuck out his chin and glared at me, as if I were the one to blame for all his misfortunes. Ha! I laughed through gritted teeth. Jiangchen, if you didn't like me, why didn't you just say so from the start? You never mentioned it in college. You didn't bring it up when we got married, and you haven't said a word about it in all these decades. I didn't hold a gun to your head and force you to marry me, did I? Jiangchen got even angrier. It's all your fault. Right after I confessed, you told your roommate. And that blabbermouth Dana went and posted the news in the class group chat, saying I had to treat everyone to a meal. If I'd broken up with you right then, what would my classmates have said about me? Ever since we got together, everyone has been telling me how wonderful you are to me. As if the moment I break up with you, I'll become a heartless scoundrel condemned by everyone. Gu Qiao, this is all your fault. You've put me on a moral pedestal and used conscience and morality to coerce me my whole life. In my memory, Jiangchen was strikingly handsome. His fair skin and chiseled features made him seem to glow. He is the most handsome young man, middle-aged man, and elderly man I have ever seen. I narrowed my eyes and scanned Jiangchen's face inch by inch. For the first time, I noticed that although his skin was fair, it looked a bit sallow, and he had 2 pimples on his chin. Although his nose is high, it is somewhat broad and thick, which makes him look a little less refined. The dazzling Jiangchen turned out to be nothing more than an ordinary student with slightly delicate features. The light that shines from him comes from my love, not from him. In that case, let's pretend we never met. From now on, let's not have any further contact. Goodbye. I stood up and walked away, feeling as if something inside me had come crashing down, leaving nothing but ruins in its wake. I come from a rural family that strongly favors sons over daughters. My parents felt that having a daughter was a huge financial loss, so they tried every possible means to recoup that loss through me. When I was in middle school, my parents told me more than once that I should start working right after I graduated, to avoid ending up in a factory. I studied hard and eventually got into first high school, ranking first in the city. The school waived all my tuition and fees and promised to award me a scholarship. The village committee director and local officials also visited our home several times, urging my parents to let me continue my education. After I finished high school, my parents said I could go to college, but only if I sent 2,000 yuan home every month. I agreed without hesitation, then made up an excuse to transfer my household registration to the school. Once I finished transferring my household registration, I blocked all of my parents' contact information. Neither of them had ever traveled far in their lives. Since they didn't care about me at all, they didn't even know what major I was studying or which class I was in. With the help of the village committee director, I was finally able to completely cut ties with my parents while I was in college. I've become homeless, so I long for a home and to be loved. In my past life, I clung to Jiangchen for dear life. Like a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood, I want a home so badly. Even though Jiangchen isn't always nice to me, he's still 100 times better than my parents. Back at my family home in the countryside, I didn't even have a room of my own. My bed was tucked away in a corner of the living room, leaving me with no privacy or dignity. I see Jiangchen as my salvation. For every kindness he shows me, I would give my life to repay him. It's only now that I realize I shouldn't have looked outside myself for love. I should learn to love myself. No one but yourself can be your savior. I ran forward in long strides, leaving all my past and the darkness behind me. I ended up getting the scholarship after all, and my advisor told me that Pei Ning, the senior in charge of awarding scholarships, wanted to meet with me. Is it him? It's actually him. I stared in disbelief at the familiar man standing before me. He was one of our company's investors, and after the company went bankrupt, it was he who injected capital to save us. Later, after Jiangchen and I got married, he disappeared from our lives. I never expected to see him again, so I couldn't help but feel a little excited. Hello, Senior Pei. Thank you, Senior Pei. My earnest bow made him laugh. Go ahead and sit down. It was a pleasure meeting Pei Ning. We exchanged contact information, and he said I could reach out to him if I ever faced any difficulties in life. I walked back to the dormitory feeling delighted. I'll repay even the smallest kindness with the greatest gratitude. Pei Ning was a great help to me in my past life, and he continues to be a benefactor to me in this one. I've spent my entire career in e-commerce, and since the industry is just getting started, and Pei Ning's company hasn't yet put together an e-commerce team, I can do him this favor just to return the favor. Since I was in a good mood, I generously bought a bag of fruit and snacks to take back to the dorm and share with my roommates. As soon as I got back to the dorm, I saw 2 big bags of KFC sitting on Zhou Xiaoxi's desk. When she saw me, Zhou Xiaoxi cheerfully handed me a hamburger and 2 egg tarts. Here, you haven't had lunch yet, have you? Eat them while they're still warm. Dana gave her a knowing look. Go ahead and eat, it's Happy Castle. I blinked in confusion. What kind of burger? Oh my gosh. Xiao Shi and Jiangchen are dating. Zhou Xiaoxi rolled her eyes at Dinah in mock annoyance. Hurry up and eat, even a chicken drumstick won't shut you up. I looked at Zhou Xiaoxi in surprise. Is she dating Jiangchen? Zhou Xiaoxi glanced at me with a slightly embarrassed look. We all lived in the same dorm and spent almost every waking hour together. I could hide my crush on Jiangchen from everyone else, but I couldn't hide it from Zhou Xiaoxi, who slept across from me. The 2 hardest things to hide in this world are a cough and love. Zhou Xiaoxi smoothed her hair and gave an awkward smile. Gu Qiao, you don't mind, do you? I gave him a very sincere smile. What are you talking about? Of course I don't mind. We're friends, nothing else matters. The past is a dim memory that cannot be recaptured, but the road ahead is bright and promising. Jiangchen is just a thing of the past. All I want to do now is study hard and make money. I had dinner with the past. Jiangchen is treating our whole dorm to hot pot. At the dinner table, he was extremely attentive to Zhou Xiaoxi, pulling out her chair, pouring her water, peeling her shrimp. Zhou Xiaoxi felt a little touched, yet also a little awkward. She kept glancing at me, afraid I might be upset, but I just buried my head in my bowl and kept shoveling in the beef brisket, tripe, and duck feet. When Jiangchen and I were together, we were both broke college students. I didn't want to spend his money, so every time we went out, we'd eat spicy hot pot or fast food, and we'd always split the bill. There weren't many occasions when Jiangchen got to treat me. I really need to eat more, preferably enough to make up for what I missed out on in my past life. I used to think that sincerity could be reciprocated with sincerity, but now I know that you can't trade a human heart for a dog's. When it came time to pay the bill after dinner, Jiang Chen shelled out over 500 yuan. Normally, that amount would cover most of his living expenses for a month and a half. We're well off in our old age. And he's so used to spending money freely that I don't think he'll be able to rein it in all at once. I wonder what will happen when he realizes it's not so easy to make money anymore. Everyone thinks that getting a second chance at life means you've cracked the code to wealth. But we're just sophomores, we can't even scrape together 1,000 yuan between the two of us. When it comes to stock trading, I do remember a few blue-chip stocks that have risen dozens of times in value. But in the short term, there hasn't really been much change. Buying a house is even further out of reach. I don't even have enough money to put food on the table. So where would I get the money to buy a house? Jiang Chen's family is actually in a similar financial situation to mine. Except that he's a boy and the eldest son, so his parents have spent all their money on him, which is why he's a little better off than I am. I started spending every day at the library, working diligently on the business plan. Pei Ning owns a small smart home appliance company that currently sells its products only in major department stores. As a seasoned e-commerce professional, I know full well that time is money. The sooner you enter this market, the bigger your share of the pie will be. At the company Jiang Chen and I started in our previous life, I handled operations and sales, while he managed after-sales service and liaised with the factory. So I took to planning like a fish to water, and within a few days, I had put together a thick proposal. Did you make this? Pei Ning sat back in his chair and was carefully flipping through my proposal page by page. I stared at his handsome face and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. In my previous life, although I worked hard my whole life and achieved some success, at best I lived a little better than the average person. But Pei Ning is the real big shot. If I could win Pei Ning's approval and get on board his massive ship, my achievements in life would definitely reach new heights. You're doing pretty well. Our team is already getting the e-commerce department up and running. If you don't have classes, why don't you come to our company for an internship? Really? Thanks, senior. I clenched my fists and stared at Pei Ning with eyes that sparkled. Great. All that hard work finally paid off. Hello. Here's the cheesecake, vanilla milk, and strawberry waffles you ordered. This is the only coffee shop near our school. The prices are pretty steep. So I've only been there once with Zhou Xiaoxi. I stared in amazement as the waiter brought out a table full of cakes. Pei Ning smoothed out the creases in his sleeve, stood up, and said, "All right, I have to go now. Little girl, eat up. Look how skinny you are." Pei Ning left, taking with him the proposal I had worked so hard on. I curled up in my chair and took small bites of cake. The cheesecake is very soft and has a rich, creamy flavor. How sweet. What did you say? Jiang Chen asked you for money. Dana stared at Zhou Xiaoxi in disbelief. And I was a little surprised too. Once I got over my surprise, it all started to make sense. I'm the one who spoiled Jiang Chen into this habit. Back then, I was working really hard, while he spent all his free time in the library after class. So by the end, I was actually better off financially than he was. So I often slipped him some money to help him out. He was too shy to accept it. So I told him to consider it a loan from me. Jiang Chen and I were each other's first loves. And we haven't dated anyone else since we started dating. Jiang Chen probably figured that since they were such a close couple, borrowing money from each other was perfectly normal, just like borrowing from a good friend. How much did he ask to borrow? How could he even bring himself to ask? How long have you two been together anyway? Dana grabbed Zhou Xiaoxi's arm, her face betraying her astonishment. It wasn't much, just 1,000 yuan. He said he'd invested his scholarship money in stocks. Jiang Chen had never had any exposure to the stock market during his college years. If I remember correctly, it wasn't until we were in our 40s and had become financially comfortable that he began to learn about investing and financial planning. Does he really remember the ups and downs of the stock market from his college days? What do you mean? Not much. 1,000 yuan is almost a month's worth of living expenses. It's only because you're well off that you think it's not much. Zhou Xiaoxi was a little upset too. There's no way I'm lending him money. What kind of guy asks a girl for money? If he doesn't have any money, he shouldn't be dating. He's been buying me all sorts of things lately, and then he actually expects me to pay for it myself. That's just ridiculous. I quietly lowered my head and went back to reading, wondering how long Jiang Chen and Zhou Xiaoxi's relationship would last. I didn't have any classes the next day, so I got up early. Pei Ning's company isn't far from the school, but it still takes over an hour to get there by bus. I was sitting in my seat listening to an English recitation on my phone when a familiar figure got on the bus. Jiang Chen stormed over to me, yanked my headphones off, and shouted, "Gu Qiao, did you get Zhou Xiaoxi to break up with me? Is there something wrong with this person?" I snatched the headphones and rolled my eyes dramatically. "Jiang Chen, could you please stay away from me? Running into you first thing in the morning is just my luck." Jiang Chen's beautiful eyes seemed to be shooting fire. I thought we made ourselves clear enough that day. I've always liked Zhou Xiaoxi. What happened between us before was just a misunderstanding. Could you please stop being so petty and ruining our relationship? Aren't you being a little too self-absorbed? Who would want to ruin your relationship? You're the one who scared Zhou Xiaoxi by asking her for money. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Chen froze. Borrow money. She broke up with me because of a loan. But what's wrong with borrowing money? It's not like I'm not going to pay it back. I didn't reply, but instead patted the boy sitting in front of me on the shoulder. "Hey, I have a question for you. I've been dating this guy for 2 weeks, and he just asked to borrow 1,000 yuan from me. Do you think I should lend it to him?" The guy immediately frowned. What kind of man asks a woman for money? Come on, get a grip. If he really liked you, he'd rather go beg for food himself than ask you for money. That's the bare minimum of a man's dignity and sense of responsibility. Take my advice. You should break up with a guy like that as soon as possible. Jiang Chen sat there dumbfounded, looking completely devastated. He turned his head and gave me a bewildered look. "But before, didn't you used to lend me money all the time?" I forced a smile and tugged at the corners of my mouth. "Because I'm a jerk. That's the honest truth. I've only just realized that in my past life. I poured my heart and soul into the Jiang Chen family, only to end up moving myself while letting others reap the benefits. I used to think that if I was kind to someone, they would be grateful. And if they weren't, it meant I hadn't been kind enough. Until reality taught me a harsh lesson. To him, a lifetime of self-sacrificing devotion was nothing more than a profound regret." Jiang Chen turned his head toward the window in silence, and we rode in silence the rest of the way, neither of us speaking. "Why are you following me?" Jiang Chen turned his head and looked at me impatiently. I stared back at him even more impatiently. "Who's coming with you?" "I'm going to my internship." I never expected that Jiang Chen and I would end up at the same company. Pei Ning welcomed us personally and hired both of us for the e-commerce department. Jiang Chen was quite surprised to see Pei Ning. As soon as Pei Ning left, he sneered, "Gu Qiao. After living another life, have you finally learned to chase money and cling to a sugar daddy?" "Same here. Time flies when you're working hard, and the head of the operations team has been extremely kind to me. He started out calling me Little Gu, then switched to Gu Qiao. And now it's Little Qiao. I think if I stay a little longer, he might start calling me Teacher Gu." Jiang Chen, however, didn't get that treatment. Like the other new interns, he was limited to doing menial tasks like printing and photocopying documents. After all, Jiang Chen's greatest strength lies in after-sales service. And in the e-commerce industry, after-sales service doesn't really require any particularly advanced technical skills. I'm really thriving in my internship. Pei Ning is very generous with my internship pay. And with the scholarship he's provided, I no longer need to work part-time to cover my tuition and living expenses. So, I've had more time to study, and my life has been busy but fulfilling. Although Jiang Chen had managed to land an internship at the company through his advisor's connections, he didn't show up very often because he spent a lot of time dating. Thanks to his efforts to make amends, he and Zhou Xiaoxi got back together. Jiang Chen cherished this relationship deeply and devoted every ounce of his energy to keeping it alive. Dating is an activity that takes a lot of money and time. He took Zhou Xiaoxi shopping, to the movies, and on dates. and celebrated all kinds of occasions with her birthdays, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and more. Money was flowing out like water, and gradually, Jiangchen began to feel the strain. He started trying to take Zhou Xiaoxi to inexpensive restaurants, but after just one visit, she got into an argument with him. You guys, Jiangchen is so ridiculous. I spent 2 hours doing my makeup, washed my hair, and put on a new outfit, and he actually took me out for spicy hot pot. That place smells so strongly of cooking fumes after just sitting there for a little while. My clothes and hair are full of the smell. He just looks down on me. Zhou Xiaoxi angrily threw her bag on the table, her eyes red with rage. I was engrossed in my book when I heard that. I looked up, puzzled, and asked, "Can't we just go out for some spicy hot pot on a date?" Zhou Xiaoxi stepped forward and pinched my cheeks. Are you stupid? He treated me to spicy hot pot. That means I'm worth no more than a bowl of spicy hot pot to him. Today you treat me to spicy hot pot, and tomorrow you'll be feeding me plain steamed buns and plain water. Besides, if dating means I can only eat spicy hot pot, isn't it better to just stay single? Why even bother with dating? We absolutely cannot let our quality of life suffer. Zhou Xiaoxi's views on love are very different from mine, and they really shook me up. After all, in my view, being in a relationship is all about giving to each other and sharing both the good times and the bad. So, what about people who are really poor? How do they date? Zhou Xiaoxi rolled her eyes. We're all broke. So of course we're trying to make money. Dating costs money and takes time. We can barely afford to eat. How could we possibly have the energy to date? Besides, if a man truly loves a woman, what man would want her to suffer alongside him? Seeing me looking dazed, Zhou Xiaoxi pulled up a chair, sat across from me, and began to lecture me earnestly. Gu Qiao, don't be foolish. They say there are 3 great joys in a man's life: a promotion, getting rich, and his wife's death. Why would a rich man stay with his dead wife? Of course he'd go find someone young and pretty. Do you really think that if you stick by a man through all his hardships and struggles for a lifetime, he'll be grateful to you? He'll just think he's a big shot with charisma. Once he gets rich, you'll be the first one he dumps because you've seen him at his most pathetic. And he won't have the nerve to brag in front of you anymore. Isn't that right? The first thing Jiangchen did after being reborn and becoming younger was to dump me, his wife of many years. I took Zhou Xiaoxi's hand. If you have something to say, just say it. Even though we shared a dorm room in our previous life, we rarely had time to chat. Since I was always working part-time, I would rush around with my backpack, darting in and out of the various shops near the school entrance every day. I had already left while my roommates were still asleep, and when I rushed back to the dorm just in time that evening, they were all getting ready for bed. Life went on at a leisurely pace, with Zhou Xiaoxi and Jiangchen arguing every other day. As for me, I devoted all my energy to my studies and work. Summer vacation was just around the corner, so I applied to stay in the dorm as usual. I haven't been back to my parents' house in 2 years. When they got married in their previous life, they demanded a dowry of 300,000 yuan from Jiangchen, threatening that if he didn't pay up, they would take a megaphone to his village and make sure his parents would never be able to hold their heads high again. Even though I ended up paying for it myself, my parents' behavior made me feel really embarrassed in front of Jiangchen. Back then, Jiangchen gave me tremendous encouragement. He said my parents weren't good to me, but he would always be there for me. He said he would give me a real home. I have already repaid my parents' love from a past life. I don't owe anyone anything in this life. I worked my butt off, going into the office every day. Even on weekends I practically wanted to sleep there. My coworkers all tried to talk me out of it, especially our team leader, Qiao. Even though you're young, you need to take care of yourself. Are you having a tough time? Don't worry. If you're having any trouble, just let me know. If money can fix it, it's no big deal. I refused, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and as a result, the whole thing even caught Pei Ning's attention. Here, take this bonus. I stared at the 300,000 on the check and went blank. Boss. Is the bonus really that much? The company is full of young people, and the atmosphere is great. Everyone calls Pei Ning boss, and after a while, I started calling him that too. Pei Ning nodded. You're worth every penny. Back then, housing in many prefecture-level cities cost only 3 or 4,000 yuan per square meter. So the bonus Pei Ning received was enough to buy an entire apartment. The head of the e-commerce department gets a commission on sales. From now on, whatever commission old Sue gets, you'll get the same. I gasped. Old Sue is our team leader. He graduated from a prestigious university with a degree in computer science. As for me, I'll only be a junior after the summer break. The key point is that the commission is really high, at least several million yuan a year. I opened my mouth, wanting to refuse but unable to bring myself to do so. Standing there torn between two choices, Pei Ning walked over and gently patted me on the head. I told you, you're worth every penny. I stumbled out of the office, completely stunned by this windfall. Is there a more generous boss in the world than Pei Ning? Absolutely not. Hey, Gu Qiao, want to buy some cryptocurrency and give it a try? I was still lost in a daydream about making millions a year when our team leader tapped me on the shoulder. What coin? Bitcoin. You know, it just came out recently, and I think it's pretty interesting. Bitcoin. Bitcoin. You mean Bitcoin? Which was worth just a few cents when it first came out and later rose to 140,000 a coin. So, I used the 300,000 check to buy Bitcoin, ending up with a total of 500,000 coins. There's no point in buying too much of this. It's hard to sell in bulk later on, with 500,000 Bitcoins. What else do I have to worry about in this life? Suddenly, I felt an endless sense of confidence. In the future, I'll be a billionaire. What do I have to be afraid of? Of course, I still have to work. No matter how much money I make in the future, I still need to eat and buy a house right now. Bro, I finally found you. Bro. I was intently studying the operational reports when the sound of a baby crying suddenly rang out in the office. Jiang Taohua, what are you doing here? Jiang Chen stood up awkwardly, his face flushed bright red. Bro, something's wrong at home. Bro. Everyone in the office stood up because Jiang Taohua was only about 19 years old, and with her baby face, she looked like a high school student at first glance. A high school student holding a baby, it just looks so strange, no matter how you look at it. Jiang Chen. Who is this? Jiang Chen, his face stern, grabbed Jiang Taohua and headed for the door. I remember now, something did happen to Jiang Chen's family a year ago. His dad broke his leg in a fall while working on a construction site. It was quite a serious injury. I actually helped cover part of the medical expenses back then. But why did Jiang Taohua bring her child along? Jiang Taohua was a traditional country girl who dropped out of school after junior high to work and support her brother's education. After working for a few years, she fell in love with a boy from her village and got married and had children at a young age. Jiang Chen's family accepted a 100,000 yuan dowry from the groom's family, but Jiang Taohua's dowry consisted of nothing more than 3 quilts. So life was very difficult for her after the wedding. But she was incredibly proud of her older brother, who attended a prestigious university. And she talked about him all the time. Jiang Chen is still young, just started middle school, and with his father's accident, things are likely to get tough for the family. Sure enough, a moment later, Jiang Chen came upstairs with his head down. He nervously pulled me aside and asked, Gu Qiao, could you lend me 100,000 yuan? I thought I was hearing things. What? Gu Qiao. He's the man you've called dad for decades. You can't just stand by and watch him die. Can you? Have you lost your mind? That's your dad. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Chen took a deep breath. Well, just for the sake of our friendship, could you lend me some money? I promise I'll pay you back. Get lost. After all, Jiang Taohua is already married and has a child to raise, while Jiang's mother has to stay home to look after her youngest son and the elderly. So the heavy responsibility of caring for Jiang's father falls on Jiang Chen. He started dozing off frequently at work, and his performance suffered as a result. After the summer vacation ended, the company terminated Jiang Chen's internship. Without this easy, high-paying job, Jiang Chen had no choice but to juggle a series of part-time jobs. And naturally, his grades took a significant hit. Finally, when everyone in their senior year was busy looking for jobs and internships, Zhou Xiaoxi broke up with him again. Zhou Xiaoxi. Get out here. Jiang Chen stood below the dormitory building with tears in her eyes, shouting at the top of her lungs for quite some time. Dana and I stood by, helpless to do anything. Dana was so angry her chest was heaving. Is Jiang Chen out of his mind? We broke up. And he's still clinging to me like this. How many days has he been calling now? I looked at Jiang Chen with disdain. After being reborn, I'd ended up in such a sorry state. If you're not doing well at work or in your studies, your love life is bound to suffer as well. I always thought that being reborn meant having a golden ticket and a bright future ahead. But without hard work, how can there be a future? Just like with studying. Someone who doesn't put in the effort won't get into a good college even if they repeat high school 10 times. Life is no different. Being reborn simply means having a better grasp of the major trends of the times and a few more opportunities than the average person. It doesn't mean you're set F. Or life. Even if you want to make money by flipping real estate, you still have to earn that first pot of gold, don't you? However, Jiang Chen has always been pretty laid back. Even in our past life, I was the one dragging him along, and we argued about it quite a bit. He enjoys fishing, painting, and drinking tea. He felt that money was never-ending, and that life needed a touch of poetry and romance. As for me, I always want to climb a little higher and go a little further, to see the sights I've never seen before. This is driving me crazy. Running into Jiang Chen is just my bad luck. Zhou Xiaoxi was so angry she couldn't even eat. You guys have no idea how crazy Jiang Chenish keeps telling me we have to get married as soon as we graduate. He even said that after we get married, we'll work together to buy a house here and bring his parents to live with us. His sister is even scarier. When she came over that time, I treated her to a meal, and the whole time she kept telling me she wanted to have several sons for the Jiang family and that once she got married, she'd take good care of his parents. Is there a throne to inherit in their family? And they're having a son. Pfft. If someone is a bit less fortunate, they can work their way up. But you can't change a family's values. If I don't get out of here fast, do you think I'm just going to wait around to become a maid in his family? I hung my head in shame. Jiang Chen's family had said the same thing to me back then, and although it had bothered me at the time, I hadn't taken it to heart. After Jiang Chen had made a few advances, more and more girls began to gossip about him. Seeing that Zhou Xiaoxi was still ignoring him, he had no choice but to give up. After all, he has to earn his own tuition and living expenses now. So he's quite busy working part-time in addition to attending classes. I'm glad I didn't follow Jiang Chen's example and throw myself headlong into the whirlpool of love, neglecting everything else. Pei Ning kept his word and gave me a bonus at the end of my senior year. I used that money to take out mortgages on several properties in prime locations. And my life began to settle down. Zhou Xiaoxi is still a close friend of mine. She passed the civil service exam, and her family bought her a house outright. So she's living a comfortable and carefree life. Quite a few of my classmates stayed in this city, and I ended up being the most successful among them. Later, I heard that Jiang Chen was still single and had been going on blind dates. But since he didn't own a house or a car and his family wasn't well off, any girl with even slightly better prospects turned him down. Zhou Xiaoxi got married. Her husband is a high school classmate of hers. They come from similar backgrounds and have known each other since childhood. After the wedding, I left the hotel and ran into Jiang Chen at the entrance. He looked a little haggard, and his fair chin was covered in stubble. Gu Qiao, are you laughing at me inside? I'm just trying to find love. What have I done wrong? I chuckled softly. Jiang Chen. That's exactly what I thought in my past life, too. With that, I got into my 911 and drove off without looking back. In the sunlight, Jiang Chen stood at the doorway, looking at me with a lonely expression, and didn't leave for a long time.